So, Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the most interesting players in the NBA in my opinion. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about Giannis's career so far, maybe make some predictions for his career in the future, and take a look at where Giannis could rank all time once he retires. So to start, let's look at his resume so far, and it's pretty good. 2-time MVP, 1-time Defensive Player of the Year, 4-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, 3-time All-Defense, and 1 Most Improved Player. One thing that is missing from that resume is NBA champion, and that's going to be a lot of his legacy debate, and it's going to determine a lot. So if we talk about Giannis as a player, he's a pretty simple player for such a dominant player. He's amazing in transition, just getting downhill with his long strides and his speed and his athleticism. He's nearly unstoppable. He's also a good playmaker. Has the ability to make passes and in transition and make the right reads. And if he gets doubled, he can find the open shooter. And he's also a very good finisher at the rim, and that's where he gets a lot of his points. In isolation in the half court, getting to the rim, doing Euro steps, athletic finishes at the rim. He's a great dunker. He's just a great finisher at the rim. And then there's also another side to his game, and that's the defensive side. He is maybe the best defensive player in the NBA. Obviously, he's a physical freak. They don't call him the Greek freak for nothing. And he has the ability to both protect the rim at an elite level, but also switch on to faster and smaller perimeter players, which makes him a very versatile and impactful defender, as proven by his Defensive Player of the Year. And he's also a very good rebounder, has averaged like 13.5 rebounds per game in his best rebounding seasons. And he's still only 26, so he still has plenty of time in his career, and his legacy is far from set, and a lot can change. So if we look at where he ranks all time now, that is a big point of debate with people, like how much do you value accolades versus talent. I think he's probably about in the late 20s. I think he's better than the guys in the 30s just off of talent alone. Like, Giannis is such a beast, but he doesn't quite have the accolades of the top players, so you have to put him down in the rankings right now, but he can definitely move up, and he obviously has the talent to move up. One thing with him, though, and I've made a whole video on it, is he underperforms a bit in the playoffs, and he needs a good situation around him, a situation where there's a lot of shooters. And in the playoffs, teams have built a wall, and it hasn't nullified him, but it certainly diminished his effect. His numbers go down a little bit in the playoffs, and that's not good. And not many of the top players all time have the reputation as chokers, but it's not like you can't overcome a bad performance all time wise. I mean, some of them will still haunt players, but Magic has had bad performances in the finals. LeBron has had bad performance in the finals. You can find almost every player has something on their legacy where they've just underperformed in the playoffs, and that's just natural. The playoffs are much higher intensity, and the standards are much higher, and whether it's his fault or not, Giannis has not been as dominant in the playoffs as he has in the regular season. He's still a very good player in the playoffs, but that's just a little something. And it's sort of natural for a player like Giannis to underperform a little bit in the playoffs, just because of his play style, which is so reliant on isolation and spacing. And suddenly in the playoffs, when there's less possessions and less transition opportunities, he's also, it's reliant on transition, and there's less transition in the playoffs. And also suddenly, Brook Lopez, who's like a 36% shooter in the regular season, starts throwing 30% from 3 in the playoffs, and the teams are like, we'd rather just double Giannis and give up a semi-contested 3 to Lopez or Bledsoe. So we'll have to see this season. They have made a few changes, using him as a ball screener more in the pick and roll with guys like Jrue Holiday and Chris Middleton. But then again, are the Bucks really going to win a championship with Jrue Holiday and Middleton making the plays in crunch time. Maybe, I don't know, but we'll have to see with that one. So, back to his all-time ranking. I think the playoffs is the biggest, black mark, though he still has plenty of time. And if he is going to win a championship, it's going to be in Milwaukee, presumably. If he's going to win one as the number one option, because he's under contract for 6 more seasons, 5-6 more seasons, I believe. So that would take him through to the end of his prime. And you would assume he's going to be the number one option, because I don't think Milwaukee is getting a player better than Giannis anytime soon. So we'll have to see if he can lead them to a championship. And he is still a young thing. Like Dirk Nowitzki, I think, is a comparable example. Obviously not in style, but in position and their careers. Dirk obviously had that terrible choke against the Warriors. I believe it was 2006, 2007, 2008, somewhere in that range, where he lost in the first round. And Giannis hasn't had that level of collapse, but he has underperformed a bit. And Dirk was known as a bit of a playoff choker until the 2011 run. And Giannis, I wouldn't call him a playoff choker, but, he's certainly underperformed. Not to the level of someone like James Harden, but still underperformed a bit. So if he can have that 2011 Dirk run, maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year, maybe it's in 3-4 years, who knows. But if he can have that run, that would just do so much for his legacy. I think, let's say Giannis plays, 6-8 more seasons. Let's say it's like 6 quality years, 7 quality years. Then he's like a 10-time All-Star. Maybe he has 3 MVPs. Maybe still has 2. Who knows? Maybe he has another Defensive Player of the Year. Who knows? But then he certainly has the All-Stars and accolades, and obviously the counting stats, presumably. And then he gets that championship. That could do wonders for his legacy, and would definitely put him up, certainly in the teens, if that were to happen. If we talk about the greatest power forwards of all time, there's obviously the greatest is Tim Duncan, and I doubt Giannis will ever surpass Duncan. Just Duncan, nearly a perfect career. I mean, 5 championships, I would be pretty confident in saying Giannis isn't going to win more than 4 championships. And then Giannis, I think Duncan only has 1 MVP, maybe he has 2. I'm pretty sure it's only 1, but Giannis might have them in MVPs, but really just the championships and Duncan's longevity, I think, will keep him a bit out of sight of Giannis. But then it gets interesting. I think that next section is guys like Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Garnett. Could Giannis be put in that tier? And I think definitely. Those are both guys, 1 MVP, 1 championship. Giannis already has 2 MVPs. He has the defense like KG. He doesn't have the shooting like Dirk. Imagine if Giannis had the shooting like Dirk. That would just be unfair. But I think he can definitely get into that tier with a championship. And then obviously, given no big injuries. And I think that's really going to be what his legacy comes down to. And then just one more thing. 2019, will that be a moment that Giannis will look back on with regret if he doesn't win another championship? Could that be his best chance of winning a championship? If you guys don't know, 2019, the Bucks, they're a really good team. They swept the Pistons in the first round, and then after losing Game 1 to the Celtics, they went on to win the next 4, and then in the conference finals against the eventual champion Toronto Raptors, they were up 2-0, and Game 3 was a double overtime game. So you think if they just hit one more free throw in that game, they go up 3-0. There's no way they're blowing a 3-0 lead. It's just not happening. And then they're in the NBA Finals against the Warriors. I'm pretty confident in saying with the injuries the Warriors had, the Bucks could have beat them, and they had a decent matchup. The Warriors didn't really have anyone to stop Giannis. Draymond is a bit too small, though he could do a decent job. And then Bledsoe and Brogdon could handle Curry and Thompson as good as any backcourt can. Brooke Lopez's shooting might give them some problems, and we'd see with Chris Middleton. And that could have been a huge moment in Giannis's career, but it didn't happen. So we'll see if he looks back on that one with regret. So Giannis, extremely talented, a very good player. I think right now he's in the 20s. If I had to predict where he'd finish, it really depends on the championship. If he doesn't get one, I think he'd probably end up in, he could probably be the best player to never win a championship, though I don't think he wants that title. And that would probably put him maybe in the late teens, 20s, like 19 to 23. Obviously, it'll differ from person to person, but if he does get that championship, I think he can definitely be boosted like around where Dirk is and could even surpass Dirk, and it just depends. But I would say if he does get a championship, maybe like the 13-ish range, like 10 to 18, somewhere in that range, depending on, MVPs and how many championships and, how dominant is that run and just things like that. But Giannis, very talented. It depends on the championship. I think he has the potential to definitely be remembered as a very good player. And that's the end of this video, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.